Personality. Introduction. Personality is the unique way in which each person deals with the world, expresses emotions, and so on. In general, though the basic physical and psychological processes involved in the development are the same for every child, the outcome is usually different. We will devote this study session to explore factors that affect everyone at one hand and also serves as the reason why one child is different from another child. We will discuss the substance of personality development using two theories: Sigmund's theory of psychosexual development and Erik's theory of psychosocial development. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Highlight the stages of psychosexual development. 2. Point out the implication of fixation to human development. 3. Discuss the criticisms against Sigmund Freud's theory. 4. Outline the element of psychosocial theory. And 5. Highlight the stages of human development according to psychosocial theory. Psychosexual theory of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, 1953, proposed 3 hypothetical parts of personality: the id, the ego, and the superego. Newborns are governed by the id, a source of motives and desires that present at birth. The id seeks immediate gratification under the pleasure principle. When gratification is delayed, as when they have to wait for food, infants begin to see themselves as separate from the outside world. The ego, which represents reason or common sense, develops sometime during the first year of life and operates under the reality principle. The ego's aim is to find realistic ways of gratifying the id. At about age 5 to 6, as the child identifies with the parents of the same sex, the superego develops. It includes the conscience and incorporates social approved should and should not into the child's own value system. Sigmund Freud developed a psychosexual theory of human development from infancy onward, in accordance with his view of a basic human motivation being the sexual drive. He divided into 5 stages, each stage centered on the gratification of the libido within a particular area or erogenous zone of the body. He also argued that as humans develop, they become fixated on different and specific objects through the stages of development. Stages of psychosexual development. Oral stage, birth to 18 months. The first stage of psychosexual development is the oral stage, which lasts from the beginning of one's life up to about the 15th month. During this stage, the focus of gratification is on the mouth, and pleasure is the result of nursing, but also of exploration of the surroundings, as infants tend to put in their mouth new objects. In this stage, the id is dominant, since neither the ego nor the superego is yet fully formed. Thus, the baby does not have a sense of self, and all actions are based on the pleasure principle. The ego, however, is under formation during the first stage. There are 2 factors that contribute to the formation of the ego. Firstly, body images is developed, which implies that the infant recognizes that the body is distinct from the outer world. For instance, one will start understanding that one feels pain only when force is applied on one's own body. By the identification of the body boundaries, one starts developing the sense of ego. A second factor to which ego formation is attributed is experiences involving delay of gratification, and leads to the understanding that specific behaviors can satisfy some needs. The infant gradually realizes that gratification is not immediate and that it has to produce certain behaviors to initiate actions that lead to gratification. An example of such behavior is crying, which seems to be purposeless during the first 2 months of the baby's life, but later seems to be used productively and is connected to certain needs. Leach, 1997. The key experience in this stage is weaning, during which the child loses much of the intimate contact with the mother and leads to the first feeling of loss ever experienced by the baby. Weaning also adds to the baby's awareness of self, since it learns that not everything is under its control, but also that gratification is not always immediate. In this stage, the gratification of needs will lead to the formation of an independent, since the baby forms a clear idea about the limit of the self and has formed its ego, and trusting, since the baby learned that specific behaviors will lead to gratification and thus to trust its own abilities but also its parents and generally social environment, willingness to meet its requirements, personality. On the other hand, a fixation can lead to passivity, immaturity, and unrealistic optimism, but also to the formation of a generally manipulative personality due to improper formation of the ego. This can be the result of either too much or too little gratification. In the case of too much gratification, the child does not learn that not everything is under its control and that gratification is not always immediate, which are the result of weaning, forming an immature personality. On the other hand, the child's needs may be insufficiently met, and thus the child becomes passive, since it has learned that either it produces behavior or not, no gratification will come. In some societies, it is common for a child to be nursed by its mother for several years, whereas in others, the stage is much shorter. Sucking and eating, however, compose the earliest memories for infants in every society. This stage holds special importance because some tribal societies commonly found in the Southwest, Pacific, and Africa consider the stomach to be the seat of emotions. Anal stage, 18 months to 3 years. In the anal stage of the psychosocial development, the focus of drive energy, erogenous zone, moves from the upper digestive tract to the lower end and the anus. This stage lasts from about the 15th month to the 3rd year of age. In this stage, the formation of ego continues. The major experience during this stage is toilet training. This occurs by the age of 2. There may be fluctuations among different societies as to the age in which toilet training occurs, and results to conflict between the id, which asks for immediate gratification of its drives that involves elimination and activities related to it, such as handling feces, and the demands of their parents. The resolution of this conflict can be gradual and non-traumatic, or intense and stormy, depending on the methods the parent will use to handle the situation. The ideal resolution will come if the child tries to adjust, but also the parents are moderate, so that the child will learn the importance of cleanliness and order gradually, which will lead to self-controlled adults. If the parents emphasize on toilet training too much while the child decides to accommodate, this may lead to the development of compulsive personality, extensively concerned about order and neatness. On the other hand, the child decides to heed the demands of the id and the parents give in, the child may develop a messy and self-indulgent personality. If the parents react, the child will have to comply, but it will develop a weakened sense of self, since the parents were the ones who control the situations, not the ego. Phallic stage, 3 to 6 years. The phallic stage extends from about 3 to 5 years of age, and the erogenous zone associated with it as the area of the genitals. Even though the gratification is focused on the genitals, this is not in the form of adult sexuality, since the children are yet physically mature. However, stimulation of genitals is welcomed as pleasurable, and boys, like adult males, may have erection during their sleep. Children become increasingly aware of their body and are curious about the body of other children, but also their parents, so that very often children of this age can be observed taking off their clothes and playing the doctor with each other, but also asking their mother whether she has penis or not. These observations persuaded Freud that the gratification is focused on the genitals this period of time. The major conflict of this stage is called Oedipal conflict, the name deriving from Oedipus, who killed his father and unintentionally slept with his mother. Freud used the term Oedipal for both sexes, but other analysts proposed that we refer to the female variant as Electra conflict. In the beginning, for both sexes, the primary caregiver, at least at most societies, and main source of gratification is the mother. As the child develops, however, it starts forming a sexual identity, and the dynamics for boys and girls alter. For both sexes, the parent becomes the focus of drive energy. For the boy, the mother becomes more desired, while the father is the focus of jealousy and rivalry, since he is the one who sleeps with the mother, but still he is one of the main caregivers. The id wants to unite with the mother and kill the father, like Oedipus did. But the ego, based on the reality principle, knows that the father is stronger. The child also feels affectionate towards the father, one of the caregivers, and his feelings are ambivalent. The fear that the father will object to the boy's feelings is expressed by the id as fear that the father will castrate him. The castration fear is not rational and occurs in a subconscious, irrational level. For the girl, it is the father who becomes desired, but the mother promotes greater ambivalence since she is the primary caregiver and the first object of drive focus for the infant. In this way, the girl feels hostility for the mother due to the demand of the id that she would eliminate her mother and unite with her father. But their ego recognizes that the expression of such feelings would lead to an emotional split with the mother. One major discovery a girl makes at this stage is that she has no penis, just like her mother. While the boy is afraid of losing it, the girl feels devastated for having already lost hers, which leads to feelings of loss and guilt. Freud described that as penis envy. Generally, Freud considered the Oedipal conflict experienced by girls more intense than that experienced by boys, potentially resulting to a submissive and unconfident personality. In both cases, the conflict between the id drives and the ego is resolved through two basic defense mechanisms of the ego. One of them is repression, which involves the blocking of memories, impulses, and ideas from the conscious mind, but does not lead to resolution of the conflict. The second is identification, which involves incorporation of characteristics of the same-sex parent into the child's own ego. The boy, by adopting this mechanism, seeks for the reduction of castration fears, since his similarity with the father is thought to protect the boy from him. The identification of the girls with the mother is easier, since the girl realizes that neither she nor her mother have a penis. Freud's theory regarding the psychosexual dynamic present in female children in this point of their psychosocial development is termed, though not by Freud himself, the Electra complex. Freud's theory of feminine sexuality, particularly penis envy, has been sharply criticized in both gender and feminist theory. If the conflict is not resolved, a fixation in this stage may lead to adult women striving for superiority over men if she had overwhelming feelings of devastation due to lack of penis, being seductive and flirtatious, or very submissive and with low self-esteem. On the other hand, men can exhibit excessive ambition and vanity. Overall, the Oedipal conflict is very important for the superego development, since by identifying with one of the parents, morality becomes internalized, and compliance with rules is not anymore the result of punishment fear. A poor identification with the opposite sex parent may lead to recklessness or even immorality. Latency stage, 6 years to puberty. The latency period is typified by a solidifying of the habits that the child developed in the earlier stages. Whether the Oedipal conflict is successfully resolved or not, the drives of the id are not accessible to the ego during this stage of development, since they have been repressed during the phallic stage. Hence, the drives are seen as dormant and hidden, latent, and the gratification the child receives is not as immediate as it was during the 3 previous stages. Now, pleasure is mostly related to secondary process thinking. Drive energy is redirected to new activities, mainly related to schooling, hobbies, and friends. Problems, however, might occur during this stage, and this is attributed to inadequate repression of the Oedipal conflict, or to the inability of the ego to redirect the drive energy to activities accepted by the social environment, or to the inability of the ego to redirect the drive energy. Genital phase, from 12 years onward. The 5th and last stage of psychosexual development, the genital stage, starts from puberty, about the 12th year of age, and onwards. It actually continues until development stops, which is ideally in the 18th year of age, when adulthood starts. This stage represents the major portion of life, and the basic task for the individual is the detachment from the parents. It's also the time when the individual tries to come in contact with unresolved residues of the early childhood. At this stage, the focus is again on the genitals, like in the phallic stage. But this time, the energy is expressed with adult sexuality. Another crucial difference between these two stages is that while the phallic gratification is linked with satisfaction of the primary drives, while the ego in the genital stage is well developed, and so uses secondary process thinking, which allows symbolic gratification. The symbolic gratification may include the formation of love, relationships, and families, or acceptance of responsibilities associated with adulthood. Fixation. A fixation occurs when an issue or conflict in a psychosexual stage remains unresolved, leaving the individual focused on this stage and unable to move on to the next. Individuals with an oral fixation may have problems with drinking, smoking, eating, or nail biting. Strong conflict can fixate people at early stages. This could be in form of A. Oral fixation, B. Anal fixation, and C. Phallic fixation. Oral fixation. The oral receptive personality is preoccupied with eating or drinking. This has two possible outcomes. The oral receptive personality is preoccupied with eating or drinking and reduces tension through oral activities such as eating, drinking, smoking, biting nails. They are generally passive, needy, and sensitive to rejection. They will easily swallow other people's ideas. Secondly, the oral aggressive personality is hostile and verbally abusive to others, using mouth-based aggression. Anal fixation. This may be caused by too much punishment during toilet training. It has two possible outcomes. The anal retentive personality is stingy, with a compulsive seeking of order and tidiness. The person is generally stubborn and perfectionist. The anal expulsive personality is an opposite of the anal retentive personality and has a lack of self-control, being generally messy and careless. Phallic fixation. At the age of 5 or 6, near the end of the phallic stage, boys experience the Oedipus complex whilst girls experience the Electra conflict, which is a process through which they learn to identify with the same gender parents by acting as much like that parent as possible. Boys suffer a castration anxiety, where the son believes his father knows about his desire for his mother, and hence fears his father will castrate him. Girls suffer a penis envy, where the daughter is initially attached to her mother, but then a shift of attachment occurs when she realizes she lacks a penis. She desires her father, whom she sees as a means to obtain a penis substitute, a child. She then represses her desire for her father and incorporates the values of her mother and accepts her inherent inferiority in society. Criticisms of Sigmund Freud's theory. Freud has been criticized by feminists and gender theory practitioners for being androcentric. His theory failed to explain female sexual development. Secondly, over the years, there have been many accusations against the scientific value of the psychodynamic perspective. Even when it will be in the best interest of organized psychoanalysis to cite favorable empirical evidence, it has failed to do so. Even so, psychoanalytic thought has been proven to be surprisingly heuristic and has probably generated more research than any other theory of personality, and perhaps more than all other theories combined. Psychosocial development theory of Erikson. Erik Erikson, 1950, a follower of Freud's, synthesized both Freud and his own to create what is known as the psychosocial stages of human development, which span from birth to death and focuses on tasks at each stage that must be accomplished to successfully navigate life's challenges. Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development is one of the best-known theories of personality in psychology. Much like Sigmund Freud, Erikson believed that personality develops in a series of stages. Unlike Freud's theory of psychosexual stages, Erikson's theory describes the impact of social experience across the whole lifespan. One of the main elements of Erikson's psychosocial stage theory is the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that will develop through social interaction. According to Erikson, our ego identity is constantly changing due to new experience and information we acquire in our daily interactions with others. In addition to ego identity, Erikson also believed that a sense of competence also motivates behaviors and actions. Each stage in Erikson's theory is concerned with becoming competent in an area of life. If the stage is handled well, the person will feel a sense of mastery. If the stage is managed poorly, the person will emerge with a sense of inadequacy. In each stage, Erikson believed people experience a conflict that serves as a turning point in development. In Erikson's view, these conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. During these times, the potential for personal growth is high, but so is the potential for failure. Stages of psychosocial development. Trust versus mistrust. Birth to 18 months. Infancy. Developing trust is the first task of the ego, and it is never complete. The child will let his or her mother out of sight without anxiety and rage because she has become an inner certainty as well as outer predictability. But when a mother is not present, the father becomes the inner certainty along with other relatives, usually surrounding the child daily. The balance of trust with mistrust depends largely on the quality of the maternal relationship. The main question asked here is my environment trustworthy or not? The central task is receiving care. The positive outcome is trust in people and the environment. The ego quality is hope. The definition is enduring belief that one can attain one's deep and essential wishes. The developmental task is social attachment, maturation of sensory, perceptual, and motor. The significant relations is the maternal parent. Erikson proposed that the concept of trust versus mistrust is present throughout an individual's entire life. Therefore, if the concept is not addressed, taught, and handled properly during infancy, in brackets, when it is first introduced, close brackets, the individual may be negatively affected and never fully immerse themselves in the world. For example, people may hide themselves from the outside world and be unable to form healthy and long-lasting relationships with others, or even themselves. If individuals do not learn to trust themselves, others, and the world around them, then they may lose the virtue of hope, which is directly linked to this concept. If people lose their belief in hope, they will struggle with overcoming hard times and failures in their lives and may never fully recover from them. This would prevent them from learning and maturing into a fully developed person if the concept of trust versus mistrust was improperly learned, understood, and used in all aspects of their lives. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. 1.5 years to 3 years, toddler. If denied independence, the child will turn against his or her urges to manipulate and discriminate. Shame develops with the child's self-consciousness. Doubt has to do with having a front and back, a behind subject to its own rules. Leftover doubt may become paranoia. The sense of autonomy fostered in the child and modified as life progresses serves the preservation in economic and political life of a sense of justice. The main question asked at this stage is, do I need help from others or not? When a child reaches the age of 1 to the age of 3, Erikson explains, the child is developing a sense of autonomy. During this stage, the toddler discovers he or she is no longer attached to the primary caregiver, but it is a separate individual. Gonzalez Mena and Eya, 2004. Autonomy is the independence a toddler strives for from caregivers. Toddlers' autonomous behavior is a way of forming their own identity away from their caregivers. Bigner, 2006. This stage is a time when a toddler has the will to become independent. Shame and doubt is likely to occur when the toddler is not given any choice or boundary because the toddler is determined to become independent. The strong will of a toddler may cause conflict between child and caregiver. Many parents are unaware of how to properly handle difficult situations in which they find themselves. Parents who are assertive and too demanding may find themselves in a power struggle with their toddler. Gonzalez Mena and Eya, 2006. In addition, parents may be too demanding for only good behavior from their toddler. Gonzalez Mena and Eya, 2004, explain that demanding good behavior will only cause frustration for the toddler. Instead, it is far better for the child to see you as a supporter and an aid rather than being an obstacle to his or her own developing capabilities and independence. Autonomy can be gained for the toddler when given reasonable choices and proper guidance from the caregiver. Parents can give healthy and wise choices to assist their child to succeed at this stage. Initiative versus guilt, 3 to 6 years, play age. Initiative adds to autonomy the quality of undertaking, planning, and attacking a task for the sake of being active and on the move. The child is learning to master the world around him or her, learning basic skills and principles of physics. Things fall to the ground, not up. Round things roll. How to zip and tie, count and speak with ease. At this stage, the child wants to begin and complete his or her own actions for a purpose. Guilt is a new emotion and is confusing to the child. He or she may feel guilty over things which are not logically guilt-producing, and he or she will feel guilty when his or her initiative does not produce the desired result. The main question asked at this stage is, how moral am I? The development of courage and independence are what set preschoolers, ages 3 to 6 years of age, apart from other age groups. Young children in this category, ranging between 3 to 6 years of age, face the challenge of initiative versus guilt. Boa, 1997. As described in B. and Boyd, 2004, the child during this stage faces the complexities of planning and developing a sense of judgment. During this stage, the child learns to take initiative and prepare him or herself towards roles of leadership and goal achievement. Riding a bike without a helmet, both examples involving self-limits. The child defines his or her own boundaries when taking initiative in crossing a street or riding a bike with no helmet. such as deciding to cross a street without looking both ways, or choosing to ride a bike at his or her own pace with no helmet. Within instances requiring initiative, such as those previously mentioned, the child may also develop negative behaviors. These behaviors are a result of the child developing a sense of frustration for not being able to achieve his or her goal as planned, and may engage in behaviors that seem aggressive, ruthless, and overly assertive to parents. Aggressive behaviors such as throwing objects, hitting, or yelling are examples of observable behaviors during this stage. With aggressive behaviors as a result of frustration, the child may progress towards developing a sense of guilt for not establishing initiative in the decision he or she makes, and or not being able to follow through with a set goal. When guilt develops, the child becomes more assertive, aggressive, inhibited, and overly dependent. These characteristics can be seen from the norm, since the child engages in behaviors that do not show a challenge and or are comfortable for the child. Thus, the child does not take on new situations unless assisted by an adult. In concordance with guilt, parents often misjudge the situation and punish or restrict the child too much. However, children at this stage require some sense of guilt in order to guide their self-control and a healthy conscience. B. and Boyd, 2004. In view of the fact that preschool children require skills necessary to become independent and responsible, parents and or teachers should learn how to assist in the child's social development. This may include teaching the child how to be courageous, empathetic, self-disciplined, and loyal. Fitro 2003 suggests several ideas on how to create these types of values during a child's moral development. Parents should be realistic in their expectations and be firm. In order to promote a safe balance between initiative and guilt, parents must provide a child with achievable responsibility. They also need to remind themselves that a child is a human being and deserves to be treated with fairness in order to develop a positive self-concept. At this stage, parents have the advantage of teaching good morality through discussion and example. By illustrating and discussing how to tolerate guilt, such as feelings of low self-efficacy, self-esteem, or self-confidence after taking initiative in accomplishing a goal, the child will learn that this type of behavior is acceptable. If the child is not given the opportunity to discuss how to accept these feelings that accompany guilt, or if the child is simply dealing with guilt reactions, then several questions may arise, such as, "Can I do this?" and "How moral am I?" Consistent with these ideas, the Mohonasen Central School District Board of Education, 2005, suggests letting children take on small tasks and gradually increase in difficulty as they grow older. This may include helping prepare small meals, setting a table, or letting them choose their own clothing for the day, all of which builds confidence and assists in developing simple math skills, in brackets, e.g., counting and sorting, close bracket. Parents and all teachers should remember that children in this stage of Erikson's psychosocial development need and deserve a time to be free. The Child Development Institute, LLC, 1998, suggests that a child with no responsibility, whether given by an adult or produced by the child, grows fearful in most situations involving change, excessively depends on adults, and is restricted from imagination and active play. These characteristics are a result of the child being immobilized by guilt, e.g., low feelings of self-efficacy, confidence, frustration, and inabilities when a personal goal has not been accomplished. Industry versus inferiority, 7 to 12 years, school age. To bring a productive situation to completion is an aim which gradually supersedes the whims and wishes of play. The fundamentals of technology are developed. Main question asked at this stage is, am I good at what I do? According to Allen and Marotz, 2003, children at this stage are becoming more aware of themselves as individuals. They work hard at being responsible, being good and doing it right. They are now more reasonable to share and cooperate. Allen and Marotz, 2003, also lists some perceptual cognitive developmental traits specific for this age group. Children understand the concept of space and time in more logical, practical ways, beginning to grasp Piaget's concept of conservation, gain better understanding of cause and effect, and understand calendar time. At this stage, children are eager to learn and accomplish more complex skills: reading, writing, telling time. They also get to form moral values, recognize cultural and individual differences, and are able to manage most of their personal need and grooming with minimal assistance. Allen and Marotz, 2003. At this stage, children might express their independence by being disobedient, using backtalk, and being rebellious. Children at this stage have to learn the feeling of success. If the child is allowed too little success, he or she will develop a sense of inferiority or incompetence. Too much industry leads to narrow virtuosity. In bracket, children who are not allowed to be children. Close bracket. A balance between industry and inferiority leads to competency. According to Robert Brooks, 2001, parents can nurture self-esteem and resilience in different ways. These include understanding and accepting children's learning problems. Highlight strengths. Teaching children how to solve problems and make decisions. Reinforcing responsibility by having children contribute, learning from rather than feeling defeated by mistakes, and making the child feel special. Create special times alone with them. Identity versus role confusion. 12 to 18 years, adolescence. The adolescent is newly concerned with how he or she appears to others. Superego identity is the accrued confidence that the outer sameness and continuity prepared in the future are matched by the sameness and continuity of one's meaning for oneself, as evidenced in the promise of a career. The ability to settle in a school or occupational identity is pleasant. In the later stages of adolescence, the child develops a sense of sexual identity. Intimacy versus isolation, 19 to 40 years, young adulthood. According to Erickson, the young adult stage, intimacy versus isolation, is emphasized around the ages of 19 and 34. At the start of the intimacy versus isolation stage, identity versus role confusion is coming to an end, and it still lingers at the foundation of the stage. Erickson, 1950. Young adults are still eager to blend their identities with friends. They want to fit in. When we arrive at stage 6, we should be prepared for intimacy, a close personal relationship, and isolation, the fact of being alone and separated from others. A balance between intimacy and isolation makes love possible, as we must know how to be alone in order to learn to truly love. Having a balanced stage 6 will help tremendously later in the coming stages when unwelcomed or unexpected isolation surfaces. For example, the death of a spouse or a loved one. Erikson, Kivnik, 1986. For example, the death of a spouse or a loved one. Erikson, Kivnik, 1986. In stage 6, one is ready for commitment. Is able to handle real relationships to a certain extent. After all, establishing a real relationship takes practice, and many of us do not marry our first love. Our ego should also be prepared for rejection, the challenge of breakups and isolation, being alone. Erikson believes we are sometimes isolated due to the above. We are afraid of rejection, being turned down, our partners breaking up with us. We are familiar with pain, and to some of us, rejection is painful. Our egos cannot bear the pain. Erikson also argues that intimacy has a counterpart, distanciation, the readiness to isolate and, if necessary, to destroy those forces and people whose essence seems dangerous to our own, and whose territory seems to encroach to the extent of one's intimate relations. Generativity versus stagnation, 40 to 65 years, middle adulthood. Generativity is the concern of establishing and guiding the next generation. Socially valued work and disciplines are expressions of generativity. Simply having or wanting children does not in and of itself achieve generativity. Integrity versus despair, from 65 years, late adulthood. The strength of Erikson's theory is that it acknowledges that development continues throughout the life cycle. According to Erikson, even older people have not yet finished developing. Older people who are coming to terms with their own mortality have a deep need to look over their whole lives. A person who can look back on good times with gladness, on hard times with self-respect, and on mistakes and regrets with forgiveness, will find a new sense of integrity and a readiness for whatever life or death may bring. A person caught up in old sadness, unable to forgive themselves or others for perceived wrongs, and dissatisfied with the life they have led, will easily drift into depression and despair. The fundamental question is, what kind of life have I lived? A positive outcome of this crisis is achieved if the individual gains a sense of fulfillment about life and a sense of unity within himself and with others. That way, he can accept death with a sense of integrity. Just as a healthy child will not fear life, the healthy adult will not fear death. A negative outcome of this crisis causes the individual to despair and fear death. Study session summary. In this study session, you learned that personality is the unique way in which each person deals with the world, expresses emotions, and so on. Social development includes relationships with others. It affects both the cognitive and the physical aspect of functioning. Sigmund Freud's psychosocial stages of development include oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stages. You also learned psychosocial stages of development, as proposed by Erik Erikson. Erik's theory describes 8 developmental stages through which a healthy developing human should pass from infancy to late adulthood. In each stage, the person confronts and hopefully masters new challenges. End of study session 4. Thank you for listening.